Good morning and welcome back to the Old Fashioned. So, Jason Sukamel is here this morning with matching Adidas hat and shirt. Jason. Oh, well, no, it's not, but it looks like it though.
Yeah, close enough, right? So,
Wait. What year did that say, Jason?
it's a stab. I don't even know, dude. Something my wife bought me. Zion National Park.
Oh, I thought it was like a 10K or something like that. Or I was like, wow, Jason, I'm impressed. I didn't know you ran.
No, my wardrobe will never impress anybody on war.
Fair enough. Jason's in here because we got recruiting stuff to talk about as well. And Jason, we'll talk a little bit about Jamie French. We'll also talk about some couple of updates. We had some Texas kids that visited over the weekend. Some Texas pledges like Bo Barnes was in the house. We'll have a little bit maybe on the Jackson Blackwell if we have a little bit of time to get to that. But Jason's allowed back on the show because now the commitments are coming in. So now I don't have to call BS on everything that he's talking about. And then we'll talk, obviously we're going to talk Texas and of course everything else. Maybe we'll have some time to even talk about SEC, anything that surprised you over the weekend. Was it one game that you watched over the weekend, whether it was positive or negative? Whether it was Florida State last night, is there anything that you looked at from a positive, negative standpoint? It's like, man, I can't believe what I'm watching right now.
Well, you kind of stole it last night. Seriously, that game last night they're just so bad on offense, Florida State. And I mean, you've heard me behind the scenes talk about how bad I think their quarterback play is. And we've seen it come to fruition 2 weeks in a row.
He's so bad.
I wrote in my column I just posted this morning, what a great weekend for Texas football, right? For Longhorn fans. The Longhorns dominate Colorado State, a team that's got some talent. I think Colorado State's going to win some games. Texas makes it look easy. Quinn's good. The defense is great. Arch Manning adds some excitement. They don't have any major injuries. And then at night, you go out and watch Michigan kind of look pedestrian, right? So that's good for Texas. And then you watch A&M. You talk about bad quarterback play. That surprised me. So, it was like almost a perfect storm on Saturday for Texas fans if they were just watching all the games that were related to them and then, their maybe future opponents. I think the season after 1 week, and I get it, 1 week, but it sets up pretty well for Texas, right?
Yeah, I mean, it does. Can I just, and by the way, Oscar, I see your super chat, so I'm going to get to that in 1 second. But Jason, I have a question, and Ketch is going to die on this hill. He'll die on this hill. But is Cade Klubnik in college? Man, is he not living up to the rankings from what he had there? Because I've yet to be impressed whenever I've watched him play.
Yeah, and he hasn't had a lot of help. Like the little bit I watched, his offensive line was terrible. I mean, you're playing Georgia, right? Of course, that's somewhat to be expected. But he was pretty good as a true freshman. Even I think sent Uiagalelei to the bench, if I'm not mistaken.
Which in hindsight, we realized that probably wasn't the hardest thing to do.
Yeah, but Ketch was the first to really stick his neck out for Klubnik, so I understand why he's kind of got his back in a corner and fighting back. But he hasn't lived up to hype and expectations. I thought he'd be much better by this point in his career. And it pains me to say it because I covered Cade as a recruit, and I mean one of the nicest, most polite kids you'll ever meet. Just an easy dude to root for, but he just hasn't taken that next step. I mean, it's pretty average. Again, they were playing Georgia. We'll see what happens moving forward, but just hasn't looked great for sure, including this last weekend.
I mean, it almost at this point makes the Klubnik versus Ewers debate that was happening in high school almost look dumb at this moment.
Yeah, I hate to say it, but you're not wrong. I mean, Quinn. Like someone in the chat just said, Club Wedman and Quinn might be the only one that pans out. It's certainly Benji. Oh, it's Ben. Okay. Yeah, it certainly appears that way as of right now, doesn't it?
Yeah. Okay. So now, Oscar, you threw in the super chat, so we'll let it go. Good Lord, saw a clip from TexAgs, and they are as homer as it gets. Thank y'all for always keeping it real. I have no clue what clip that he
I don't know, but that could be said for the last 20 years, Oscar. It could have been any clip from the last 20 years. And, hey, I like to poke fun at TexAgs, but I know those dudes. I know Billy and Jason Howell, of course. I know all those dudes, Olin Buchanan even. So they're all good dudes. But, yeah, that website has a mindset of its own for sure.
look, they understand their audience, right? And their audience and what they create is a little bit more, positivity around the program. They will sometimes, if it's, they will tell you it's raining if someone's pissing on your leg. Like this from a business standpoint, and I look at it purely business, Jason, they do extremely well. They got tons of subs, they got tons of advertisers. So their business model is good. Like
incredibly well run. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I mean,
honestly, they're probably the I don't know what's the word I'm looking for, not the pinnacle, but they're probably kind of the one of the model that everybody else could go after. I mean, they do a tremendous job in terms of resources and advertising and coverage and things. Yeah,
100%. They got their own studio that they do filming and stuff. So I from a business standpoint, I can't knock anything that they do. They know their audience, and more props to them. Billy Berg comes in with his super chat, and then he says Texas 35, Michigan 10, enjoying watching coaching meltdowns. Okay.
I'm not going quite that far. We'll make our predictions later in the week, and I want to do my breakdowns my matchups before I really get into that. But I'm not going to disagree with Billy based on what I saw from week 1. I mean, week 2 usually things kind of even out a little bit, good or bad, right? So maybe Texas comes back to earth a little bit. Maybe Michigan plays a little better. But boy, Billy, based on what we saw last week, I'm not going to argue with you if that's your prediction. I mean, that's about what it looked like when watching both those games.
Last thing, as far as just as we're just kind of going around the world and stuff, I'll tell you the thing that has impressed me the most was seeing Vanderbilt actually pull out a win versus Virginia Tech.
Yeah.
I thought they were probably one of the worst teams, but them and Mississippi State in the conference. And so for Vandy to actually get a win against a team that's supposed to be kind of decent in the ACC, bad weekend for the ACC, by the way. God, horrible for them. But seeing Vanderbilt get something, I was like, actually, there's two extremes. There's Vanderbilt and then there's Florida, right?
Oh, yeah.
So seeing Vanderbilt get something, I was like, wow, look at that. And seeing Florida just, God, honestly, outside of Miami, this Florida schools suck, and I'm fumbling. I feel like I can say that, can't I?
Yeah, I didn't watch any of that Miami game, but I had Cam Ward, their quarterback. I had him in Prize Picks, so I was paying attention from a distance. They just looks like just beat the crap out of Florida, and obviously Florida State is what it is. I mean, Miami might be a pretty formidable team. Not might be. It looks like they will be a formidable team. The Vanderbilt game, I actually watched some of that. I had it kind of on in the background, and like, it wasn't a fluke, man. I mean, they looked like the better team over, like you said, Virginia Tech. It wasn't like they beat some lower level team. Now, I'm not saying Vanderbilt's going to go on some run through the SEC, of course, but that was, I mean, really a highlight win for Vanderbilt for sure.
Can't you show you this real quick? I don't know if you saw this, Jason, but let me put this on the screen. Did you see the Miami players talking to the Florida recruits in the swamp?
I didn't watch the video, but I know what you're talking about.
Okay, let me see if I can get this on the screen here. Look this happened. How bad, Jason? How bad of a recruiting weekend is that?
I mean, that's like, is that a fireable offense for Billy Napier? Just saying that? I don't know, dude. And did you see Billy Napier? There was a clip of him like coming off the field and like meeting the AD or the president. I can't remember. And they're like shaking hands, like trying to force a fake smile. It's like, oh, that thing's crashing and burning already. We're 1 week into the season. So.
Could you just imagine? And in that we saw a similar thing when it was like Keelan Robinson last year at Alabama. And remember, like he went there and he saw a lot. We went to the recruiting session and he started telling all the kids, come to Texas. You don't need to come here.
In-state rival. I mean, it still was pretty bad, but it's not your in-state rival. You didn't just beat the living tar out of them. It was in Florida, right? Was it on Florida?
Yeah, that was in the
Yeah, so on their home turf. I mean, I guess Texas, they did beat them pretty good on their home turf. But, yeah, it wasn't quite as savage as Miami doing it to Florida.
Yeah.
On the hot seat, So.
Yeah. Well, Jason, let me ask you this. thinking about the Texas game, and Jason, now we're going to talk about the Texas thing. Jason's got some recruiting updates as well that we're going to get into. But so I don't want to limit him. But one of the things that I thought was interesting, I asked Sark about this in a press conference yesterday. And then afterwards, then I noticed it was a thing that a lot of the TV cameras and people kind of picked up on and started using, which was that Texas going into Alabama last year and having that success. It's hard not to think about that when Texas is playing Michigan this year and we're talking about going into the big house, 100,000. It's funny when Sark said like there's only going to be 100 people for rooting for Texas. Like, okay, Sark, we know how Texas travels. Like,
yeah, I think I know 100 people going to that game.
Yes, exactly. Like 100 people keep texting me and DMing me like, "What are you doing on a Friday night? Can we get together for drinks?" Right? So I get it. It's, but he's got to say that, right? But it's interesting, Jason, and I'm curious from your perspective. How much do you think? Because he mentioned there was 46 players who are currently on
the number. Okay, 46.
He said 46 players on this team actually did go to Tuscaloosa last year. So how much, even though Sark will try to say, well, each year is different, but how much do you think going at Bama last year and having that success in Tuscaloosa helps Texas going on the road against Michigan this year?
Yeah, man. I think it helps quite a bit. I mean, especially your key players. I mean, Quinn and your offensive line; those guys are important in road environments. Have played in this type of environment. Texas to me, Anwar, maybe like we saw with Notre Dame against A&M. You saw Notre Dame coming out of the tunnel, and they're all fired up, and their coaches all fired up. Texas almost likes playing the part of the villain, right? They know they're hated everywhere they go, and I think they kind of feed into that. So, it's going to be a hostile environment, 100,000+ people, obviously. You said it. There's going to be a lot of Texas fans there, but they're going to get drowned out probably by Michigan fans. But I just don't view it as that big of an impact going on the road, especially when you are hated so much. Kind of like when they go to A&M later in the year. They know what they're in for. They kind of just thrive and relish in those opportunities. So, but to gain that experience in Tuscaloosa, especially like I said, Quinn, your offensive line, those guys are big. I mean, hey, Isaiah Bond played there, so we'll see what kind of reaction he gets, and the tight end as well, Nyblack as well. But yeah, I mean, I certainly think it helps having played in not just that, but even having played Oklahoma and playing in the college football playoffs. I mean, this team has played in some big environments. I don't think it'll be overwhelmed by any means, and I think Texas will be up for the challenge. I think they probably love that challenge. I mean, this program, and maybe it's because Texas is such, everybody looks at Texas as kind of this giant in college football, and some people will say, "Hey, you guys think you're a giant in Austin, but you're really not." I mean, Sark's getting them back there, but Texas for the last decade has not been this giant that they think they've been. Okay, but Texas, I think, looks at that as like, "Hey, we like being hated. We love going in there and just kicking you guys and taking your pride on your home turf." This team seems to do a good job with that, so I think they'll be ready. I don't think it'll be overwhelming for them to go into the big house.
It seems like every program needs that like win, right? That signature win. And I think Sark needed that signature win. When you look back on it, and we looked at Sark from year one, until year now, was that the signature win, going there against his mentor, right? And against guys that he knew coming in. And then again, remember, Sark was kind of supposed to be the heir apparent to Saban, right? That was kind of the thought process. In hindsight, they probably should have done more to hold on to him and doesn't leave. I mean, hard for him to turn down a Texas job, right? But they probably should be made. It's probably hard to sweeten that pot, but is that thing when you look at Jason, you say, is it translatable for you? Because I saw it last year, it's easier for me to believe that it can happen this year going into this weekend?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, that's got to be his signature win, right? I mean, maybe it would have been Washington. It wouldn't be Oklahoma after last year. Yes, I mean, that's got to be his signature win. And that did kind of springboard them, forward to nearly a championship levels. I mean, conference championship, of course, but nearly playing for the national championship. So, I was always a big Sark believer. I mean, I've said this 100 times, kind of tooting my own horn. Like, he was the guy when Texas was in a coaching search. It's like, go get Sark. Texas needs a young offensive mind. I just kept saying that. So go get Sark. And it's worked out pretty well. But I've always been a Sark believer. But that's when they go into Alabama and beat them. Like Sark said, they were down in the fourth quarter. People sometimes forget. It wasn't like they just walked in and blew the doors off.
Yeah, I forgot about it. I'll be honest, I forgot about it.
That's but it was pretty brief. They were down, and I'd have to go back and look at the box score, but they rallied back and put them away pretty convincingly and ran the ball down their throat. So that was the game to me. All where I was like, okay, this is legit. This dude's got it going. This team's got it going. So I think certainly in my eyes that was his signature win. And I guess the question, if they go up to Ann Arbor and win this weekend, I would still probably paint the Alabama win as a signature win, even over this weekend, I think. Yeah.
So one of the things, Sark, it was interesting yesterday, Jason. Sark, when he started giving us all these numbers.
There was a lot of numbers yesterday.
There was a lot of numbers.
I'm trying to transcribe. I'm like, damn, was that number? Which number went with what stat? I can't remember. So, yes.
It was a lot. I got a portion of it, right? Okay. He said 5 players scored their first touchdown for Texas on Saturday. He said 8 different players ran the football, 28 players had a tackle, 31 players played in their first game, 51 players played in the first half, 77 total players played. I think he also said like 10 receivers may have caught balls or something like that.
Half. 10 in the first half.
In the first half.
Overall, maybe.
Yeah, something to that effect. And then there was a lot. It was a lot. Let's be clear, he worked on this, right? Like, either John Bianco gave him a hellified stats, but he wasn't looking down at it. So I feel like he worked on it over the weekend. We're not going to see that kind of rotation against Michigan, are we? Like, that's great for Colorado State, but isn't this the week, though, Jason, where this is where we really know who the 2 deep is, because we're not expecting him to go that deep, are we?
Not that deep. I mean, Colorado State, you're at home. It's hot. It's Colorado State. You jump on them early. The game's over, by halftime. There was talk within our Orange Bloods chat, like, hey, does Quinn even play in the second half? I was like, so it was that kind of game. But this is a deep team. It's not going to be like what we saw last week. No, we may not see that again. Well, maybe not. We may see it, one of these home non-conference games. But I do think they'll play a lot of players compared to maybe what they've done in previous years. Yeah, I think we'll probably see more players play and more players touch the ball and more players make tackles than we saw maybe against Alabama last year, for comparison's sake. It's a good question. That'll be an interesting thing to look back at, though, right, on Sunday or Monday. But I think they trust their depth, and I think they should. So I think we'll see more players play in this game than we probably would in big games, maybe Oklahoma last year or Washington or Alabama. But it's a good question. That'll be something, that's a good question for Alex Dunlap on our modcast next week.
His head, I'm sure his head is exploded by all the stuff that he needs to do. Okay. So let's talk recruiting for a second, Jason. So last time we had spoke, you felt really good about Jamie French and the possibility that he would commit. He did commit this past Friday, and it was Friday, right?
Friday morning. Yep.
Friday morning. It's 7:30, I think, in the morning or something like that. In the, by the way, worst live broadcast of a recruiting commitment.
There was no broadcast.
There was none. I was like 24/7. I have no problem with your work.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, if you're going to have the live broadcast commitment of Jamie French, you might want to show the commitment of Jamie French. I'm just, anyway. Nonetheless, he does commit, and I want to get your general thoughts on that, because now Texas has, 2 really good receivers that are committed in this class. I'm thinking we can definitely turn the page on the whole DeCorian Moore conversation, and probably can put a ribbon and bow on that and focus in on the guys that they do have. Give me your thoughts on French and that commitment.
Huge commitment, just from a talent perspective, a needed commitment by Texas in terms of losing out on DeCorian Moore. I mean, obviously they got Khalil Lockett, but now you've got 2, 5-star-ish type players. I mean, Jamie French is I think he's 5-star across the board. I'm not even sure about that, but big time commitment, big time player, and it just continues to give Texas some momentum. There's not a lot of uncommitted guys left, Anwar. for being honest. But, Texas now is looking at flipping guys. I see Vivek in the chat asking about updates on the Florida State defensive lineman. And I'll circle back to that, Vivek. But, it gives Texas added ammunition when they're trying to flip some of these guys. It's just a big recruiting win for Texas. He's an elite player, Anwar. I've seen him in person. I've watched his film. I said with Jamie French, there's not anything he doesn't do well. Okay. I can't find a weakness in his game. He's just solid all around, and he's a plus player in every category, including as a blocker, including running after the catch, his route running, his catch radius. He just does everything well. So really, really big pickup for Texas. You see it there, 5-star player, number 2 ranked receiver in the country.
That's pretty good.
Number 16 nationally. So, he's easily a 5-star player. So huge pickup for Texas. That one's been in the works for a while. Jamie played some cat and mouse, went and visited Miami, went and visited LSU, kind of talked those two schools up, both publicly and privately, trying to throw people off the scent of his strong leaning towards Texas, if you will. But we never really bought into it. We always liked Texas's position. And, I'll say this. I don't think Miami is going to go away in this one.
Sure.
Maybe not LSU even. But Miami in particular, the way they threw the ball last week, if they have the type of season where they're capable of, that one could be interesting. But I wrote in my 3-2-1. I said, hey, I'm predicting Jamie French will sign with Texas, which isn't going out on a huge limb by any means. But Miami's not going to go away in that one. They're the in-state program. They've got NIL deep pockets. If they put up strong offensive passing numbers, Jamie will probably continue to give them a look. But I think Texas holds on to them. And that was a big recruiting win for Texas on Friday.
Hey, just real quick, Jay Lee has a question in here. Can you confirm if Michael Terry was there on Saturday? He said he saw a pick. Did you see anything like that?
I have not. Jay, I don't think I'd be able to get that answer while we're on the air, but I know Jay's on a lot of our shows. So maybe for the modcast, I'll try to check in on that. But I have not heard that he was there. I did not see that.
Okay. I'm just doing a quick Michael Terry search online, and I do not see anything. I feel like that would have made it to our boards by if that was true, to be quite honest with you. Like, I feel like that would have been something that people would have said. And again, I'm just doing a real quick search, and I don't even see anything on Michael Terry. There's nothing new on Michael Terry, by the way, right?
Not really anything at all. He's going to take some unofficial visits. Like, everybody thought he'd commit before the season started. We're just kind of in a holding pattern on Anwar. It's Texas, it's Nebraska, it's Oregon. We're just kind of, I think he's probably going to show up at some games. So, I don't think he was at that game Saturday, but I'm literally typing a text message right now. So, but no, not a whole lot new. We're just kind of in a holding pattern for him right now.
All right. Modcast will be at 10 o'clock this morning. The chain is not on, but it is around. Maybe I'll bring it back for 10 o'clock. Jason, I'll ask you, because Michael Terry is kind of the only guy that's left out there. So really it's more about kind of babysitting the guys that have committed. And then,
flipping guys. And I'm sorry, Elmer, to cut you off. Vivek asked about the Florida State defensive lineman. Nothing new. They just played last night, so I'm not going to pounce on those dudes too hard. But Texas is talking to all 3 of their defensive line commitments. Myron Charles told me he's planning on coming to the Georgia game. And I'll say this, Vivek, a lot of times these teenagers like, oh yeah, I'm going to be there. I'm going to this game. I'm going to that game. Well, it's not always that easy, but he did say he's planning on coming in, but that means scheduling flights, and he'd have to pay for his own hotel. Georgia weekend. Okay. That's not going to be cheap. Exactly.
He's staying out in Round Rock.
Maybe even then, maybe as a family friend he could crash with, I don't know. But he did say he's planning on coming to that game. They're still talking to Javian Hilson. They're still talking to Kevin Wynn. So nothing, those wheels are kind of slowly in motion, but I think it'll be later in the year before we see a lot of real traction there. But if there's one that I'm watching there, it's definitely Myron Charles.
Let me ask you, let me just get one recruiting question in here. You spoke to Bo Barnes, the linebacker commitment. He went to Oregon, I guess, over this past weekend, and so a very interesting game versus Idaho. That was a funky game with that. That being said, I'm not. I don't know what to make out of that. That's an easy. It's week one kind of game.
Yeah,
And by the way, the people who say it's week one are the people who perform pretty shitty in week one.
Yes.
Those are always the week. Hey, no one in Texas is saying, it was a week one performance versus Colorado State, right? So anyway, he goes and sees that. What's your thought? What did he tell you coming out of that visit, Jason?
Yeah, first off, I was shocked. And it was funny because we were talking. He did watch the Texas game on television that morning. And then he's at the Oregon game, and he said he and his dad were also watching the Texas A&M game on their phone while watching the Oregon game. So
wow.
He's a football junkie. The guy likes football, but he's been so solid with Texas. And I know you get sick of me hearing me say it, but like truly, man, I like saying it. He's just a great kid, man. He just is. He's very forthcoming, very open, doesn't pull any punches. He's been so positively committed to Texas, Anwar. When it came out that he was up at Oregon, and I think it was like an Oregon writer saw him, and so it started leaking out Saturday night. Oh, Bo Barnes is up here. And I was like, whoa, I did not expect that. Well, I called Bo on Sunday, and as he always is, he's awesome, gracious with his time. And he was just a straight shooter. He's like, man, I just got invited up there. Rashad Samples actually invited me up there. We've known him for a while. I said, hey, dude, you should come up and just check us out. So Bo was like, hey, they played on Thursday. Skyline played on Thursday. So he kind of had the weekend off. So he and his dad made a kind of a last-minute decision to fly from Dallas and caught a direct flight to Eugene, watched the game. He was back home Sunday afternoon. When he and I talked, he goes, nah, man, it was just a one-time experience to go up there and see some football. I said, so does Texas have anything to be worried about? He goes, not at all, 100% locked in with Texas. He's coming down for the Mississippi State game when Texas plays. The one teeny red flag, I don't even like saying it like that because I don't think there's anything to be worried about, but he didn't tell the Texas coaches before he went. When he and I talked on Sunday, hey, have you talked to the Texas coaches? And he goes, no, I hadn't even talked to them yet. So I was like, well, that conversation will probably happen at some point today. But I'm sure it was fine. Just knowing Bo, I'm sure he totally reassured the coaches, hey, you guys have nothing to worry about. And the coaches probably said, hey, it's cool. I mean, this staff is like, hey, if you want to go watch football, we get it. KJ Lacey does it all the time. Just keep us updated so we're not caught by surprise. Okay. So that was a little bit of a surprise, but I don't think there's anything to be worried about with Bo Barnes.
Yeah, it's got to be interesting when you are committed to a program and you're taking these visits to these other programs, and it's like, it's like, well, it's cool. Is it just like, well, I just wanted to see Oregon and I wanted to see their facility. And like, these guys are super happy that you're here, but you're really like, nah, I don't want to be here. It's like a fascinating thought process.
Kind of just using you guys for, for 5 or 6 hours just for, but yeah, I mean, it's just, I don't know.
At that point, Bo, go see a better game than Idaho, right?
Yeah.
If you're going to do that, then do it, like some of the recruits want to come for the Georgia game. Like that's when you use it up, right? Jason, I don't want to get in too much into anything. Is there anything else you wanted to, if there's one other topic you wanted to get into? Because we got the podcast in another few minutes. And, we got to start with, hey, where's your head at after the game?
Yes, be ready for that question. Texas did host a defensive lineman who's committed to Baylor, Onward, Jackson Blackwell from Lorena. He came in for an unofficial visit for the Texas game. They have not offered him yet. But he's on their radar, and Kenny Baker told him, hey, we're going to keep watching you. We'll stay in touch. Just keep playing well, and we'll see where things go. And I said, well, if Texas offers you Jackson, I talked to Jackson. I said, how would that affect things? And he goes, I haven't really even processed that or thought that far ahead. He said, I'll kind of cross that bridge if and when I get to it. Now, the fact that he showed up to their first game as an invited guest tells me there's a pretty strong interest. So, we'll see. Texas has a lot of irons in the fire at defensive tackle. They want 1 or 2 more defensive tackles. Jackson Blackwell is a guy that's on the radar. Will he get offered? We'll see. Could depends on what happens with some of these Florida State guys and a few others.
And by the way, Jason, doesn't it behoove the staff to bring in guys? Because if they have to go up to, let's say, 105 scholarships, then all of a sudden, and they make a decision on how many scholarships they want to fill. But if you get all of a sudden, you're like, we don't want to, we can have a 95 class instead of an 85 class, or don't you kind of need to kind of keep tabs on guys that say, hey, we may have to need to offer this person if we find out in November that we can go up to, $1.05?
If that's when that rule goes in place. I mean, I don't know exactly. I don't know when they're talking about that rule going in place, but more than that, I mean, you just always want to keep guys warm. You want to keep the communication open because, come October, November, if you need a defensive tackle, you're looking around the state and you're like, okay, it's hard to just all of a sudden pick up the phone, some guy you've never talked to, and be like, hey, dude, flip your commitment, come see us. If you've been talking to a guy like Jackson Blackwell and he goes out and has a kick-ass senior season, then your chances of flipping him are much stronger. Hey, by the way, someone close to Michael Terry just said, not to my knowledge on the game. Said the only game he's talked about going to is the Georgia game. Now, that doesn't mean he didn't sneak in without this guy knowing, but this guy talks to Michael Terry pretty regularly. So, but it does sound like he'll be at the Georgia game. But yeah, there's a lot of things that go into that. There's a lot of, listen, you've heard Sark say it before. He goes, hey, just because a guy commits elsewhere, you still want to have a good relationship with them. A year from now, they may be in the portal, right? You may be recruiting them that way. So they still talk to all these guys who are committed elsewhere if they're still on their board. So Jackson Blackwell being one. There were a few Texas commits that came in. Caleb Chester, Smith Arogbo, Lance Jackson. Caleb Chester's teammate, Isaiah Williams, who's a really good 2026 safety, was at the game. I talked to both those dudes. I'll have write-ups on them probably tomorrow, actually. So, everybody had a good time. Everybody enjoyed the experience, liked watching Texas play. Just positive reviews all around, including from Jackson Blackwell, who we started talking about. He just said, hey, man, it was a great experience. Got to meet some new coaches. Still happy with his Baylor commitment. But, if Texas offers, he said, we'll see what happens.
Well, yeah, and to your point, Jason, you just never know. I know you said next year, but what if you're like, the Kelvin Banks of the world, where you come find out in December that your coach is going to another program, and you're like, hey, you know what? I don't think I want to go to Miami, and you've already kept the contact with him. You're like, hey, perfect way to slide in, right? Or even DJ Campbell, to a certain degree, right? So that helps in that regard, right, Jason?
Yeah, Cam Williams, I think, is the other one you're thinking
of.
I'm
sorry.
Yeah, but Texas is recruiting at least one Florida commitment right now, and they may have a coaching change maybe next week. Who knows? Listen, you've always got to keep the lines of communication open. Absolutely.
All right, Jason and I, we will be back in the next 25 minutes for the Modcast. So it's time for us to do a couple of little things, but we'll be back soon. So, Jason, I'll see you in a few minutes. You can go ahead and sign off now. I'll wrap this up.
I will be wearing the same outfit, and I'll see you in 25 minutes. So.
All right. Thank you, Jason Suchabel, orangebloods.com. He is our recruiting guy, our recruiting guru who takes care of everything. And you know who I am. And I'll be back tomorrow morning. Actually, I'll be back in 25 minutes. So let me go ahead and fold some laundry. Fold some of these kids' laundry over the next 15 minutes. And then go ahead and get this thing taken care of. So I'll see you guys soon. Y'all take care. Remember, I always say live each day is like it was your last, because one day it will be. Go out and enjoy your Tuesday. I think your Texas Longhorns are going to have a fantastic week. And hopefully that ends with a good butt kicking out there in Ann Arbor.